Kevin Costner blames Kevin Reynolds for the failure of Waterworld, even though it was Kevin Costner's fault. They fought on the set all the time. There is a director's cut that Kevin Reynolds has, and I think the movie as is really terrific. There's enough great Kevin Reynolds stuff in it to overlook the fact that Kevin Costner is a douchebag. Waterworld, which bombed and didn't help his career at all. His next movie was 187, which we're going to talk about. Then he did The Count of Monte Cristo, which was great. Tristan and Isolde, which was great. Kevin Reynolds and Kevin Costner made up again, and they worked on the great miniseries called Hatfield and McCoys together. So that's sort of Kevin Reynolds' history. But 187 is the film we're talking about. Samuel L. Jackson plays Trevor Garfield. He is a teacher in New York. And at the beginning of the film, you see him riding across the bridge into the borough of Brooklyn, and where he is a high school teacher. And it's a bad neighborhood. The teacher, the school is really, really bad. Lots of gangbangers and lots of danger in which the school exists. And one of the students that he fails stabs him several times in the hallway. Method Man, in fact, plays the gangbanger student who stabs Samuel L. Jackson's character, Trevor, multiple times. And so cut to sometime later, about a year later, and he now lives in Los Angeles, Trevor does. And he is now a substitute teacher. He gets a call to come to a school to be a substitute teacher while one of the teachers is out. Well, he gets to this school. It is a completely different vibe than the beginning of the film. Beginning of the film, which took place in New York, was all shot in blue hues. And then when he gets to LA, it's all hot orange red color. And so he is hired as a substitute teacher. He's brought in, and again, gangbangers, really terrible students, very, very dangerous for the teachers that are there. The students don't care. They're very dangerous. They carry guns. Some of them are convicts, who have the tracing devices on their ankles. So he tries to teach, but he can't. And it starts to get very, very dangerous. Clifton Collins Jr., who in this movie went under the credit of Clifton Gonzalez, plays one of the gangbangers. And the head of this gang has mysteriously been missing and then is found dead. So they don't know who may have killed this person. And meanwhile, Samuel L. Jackson's character takes up with a teacher played by Kelly Rowan, who you would remember as a regular, really terrific on The O.C. She did a bunch of other things. Clifton Collins Jr. Was in Capote and Traffic, a bunch of other films. He's in Nightmare Alley, the new Guillermo del Toro movie. He made the only thing I liked about Scott Pilgrim was his appearance with Thomas Jane. Anyway, he's a terrific actor. He plays the gangbanger that he has the most conflict with, Samuel Jackson. John Hurd is in it, the late, great John Hurd. You probably remember him from Home Alone, but he was in Cutter's Away and a ton of other movies. He plays another teacher named Mr. Childress, Dave Childress, who is a gun nut, who thinks that the way to deal with these kids who don't give a shit, who are gangbangers, is with a gun. So he's one of the teachers there. Karina Arroyev is in the film as Rita. She plays a teenage girl who hangs out with gangbangers, whose boyfriend was murdered. She would go on to be in Orange is the New Black and 24, and she's fantastic in this movie. So those are the main characters, and it gets to the point where it's like, is Samuel L. Jackson, is Trevor responsible for the murder of this kid? Is he attacking? Is he going after the gangbangers? Is the teacher taking it into his own hands and going after these punk gangbanger kids? It's left up to be sort of a mystery, and you don't really know. It affects the relationship that he has with his, with the fellow students, with the gangbangers and the students who are trying to do well, and with Kelly Rowan, the teacher whom he may have a romantic relationship, unless, of course, he is actually, in fact, murdering these gangbanger kids. A teacher who's finally had it after being, shivved and stabbed almost to death. Has he actually reached the breaking point? Is he like, fuck this? These kids, you can't teach them. They're worthless. Let's kill them until we get to the point where I'm a teacher and I want to do my job and they're stopping me from doing my job. there's a lot to think about in this movie. It is incredibly well made, like a really incredibly well made movie. Kevin Reynolds tells the story kind of uniquely and unlike any other director. It's beautifully photographed. Erickson Core is the cinematographer of this movie. It is an extraordinarily beautifully photographed movie. The soundtrack is amazing, using really cool songs that are used specifically. Kevin Reynolds is a director who uses songs very, very well. The soundtrack for this movie, which is a soundtrack that I have owned since 1997. It's one of the most listened to soundtracks that I own. And it is really, truly one of the best soundtracks ever. The music, the songs, the way they're used in the movie, the opening credits, the sequence that's used in the song that's used in the opening credits is great. And again, it's the most impassioned, the best, and the most heartbreaking performance by Samuel L. Jackson. I think it's easily the best thing he's ever done. The film was written by a teacher who was in the trenches in these inner city schools. Not on, and again, this character. By the way, this character that Samuel L. Jackson plays was the inspiration for the substitute teacher sketches with Key and Peele. Hey, Aaron, D-Nice, that whole thing, and Balake, that whole, you know it, the classic, one of the greatest sketches in the history of comedy. Are the substitute teacher sketch. Well, they were inspired, those substitute teacher sketches were inspired by 187, the movie I'm talking about. So you can thank 187 for that. But on its own, 187, a brilliant movie. It is really suspenseful, really intriguing. It's a mystery for a while, and then ultimately it's incredibly heartbreaking. One of the reasons I think this movie failed the way it did was because it's very uncompromising. The teacher who wrote it, the real-life teacher who wrote it, had horrible experiences in the inner city teaching these kids and was very depressed and destitute when he wrote it. And the film has a very bleak and very down ending. Like, it's a fucking downer. Like, the ending of this movie is as bleak and sort of heartbreaking as it can get, and I think that added to one of the reasons why it didn't do very well at the box office, because it's an uncompromising and bleak ending. Like, when it's over, you're like, fuck, I think in a great way. Everybody in the movie is spectacular. All the acting is great. You're grabbed from the very first scene. When you open a movie with a scene with a teacher getting stabbed with a shiv multiple times in a school hallway, that'll grab your attention, and it just gets better from there. There are moments of humor in it, and again, the entire cast from top to bottom, the kids, the gangbangers, the students, the other teachers, Kelly Rowan, Clifton Gonzalez is his credit in this movie, the great John Hurd. There's a terrifying scene in the movie, I think the most terrifying scene, where Samuel L. Jackson's character goes over to John Hurd's house to have a couple of drinks and talk, and John Hurd, pulls out his arsenal of guns and talks about how he wants to deal with these kids. It is really, I think, the best scene that John Hurd has ever, as far as acting, his best scene ever is this scene in 187. And it's chilling. It's the scariest, most terrifying moment in the entire movie. And there are no gangbangers in it. There are no bad kids in it. It's two teachers talking, and the one teacher is the most terrifying character in the entire movie. So, 187, that's what it's called. I'm assuming you can find it streaming. I know it's available on DVD and all that stuff. It is an undiscovered gem. It's a great movie that bombed at the box office that deserved so much more, as does director Kevin Reynolds. Look up his movies. I'll probably be doing more Kevin Reynolds movies as part of Undiscovered Gems. But the first one here, 187. As good a movie as you can get, falls under the category of drama, of a little bit of mystery. From the teacher's point of view, man, it's in the inner city at that time, incredibly impossible almost to teach these kids anything. That's what the core of the movie is about. Powerful stuff, written by a real teacher. A great movie, 187, the first of my Undiscovered Gems that I think you should check out. So check out 187, and we'll do it again soon.